The night my stepmother raised her hand to strike me, my father walked in. He stood still for 3 seconds, then turned away to retrieve a metal box from his safe. He left the house without a word. I thought his silence meant he did not care. I was wrong. That box and a forgotten key were the weapons he left me for a public revenge she never saw coming. My name is Sophie Harrison. I am 28 years old, and for the last 3 years, I have lived in a converted loft apartment on the edge of the Arts District in Richmond, Virginia. It is a space of exposed brick and tall windows, smelling perpetually of roasted coffee and old paper. By day, I work as the content lead for Northlight Pixel Studio, a boutique creative agency where I manage a team of 6 writers and designers. On paper, I am the picture of a modern, independent American woman. I pay my own rent, I drive a sensible sedan, and I have a savings account that I check every Friday. To my colleagues, I am efficient and calm, perhaps a little reserved, but reliable. They do not know that my independence was not born out of ambition. It was born out of necessity, a survival instinct honed in the kitchen of a 4-bedroom colonial house in the suburbs of Maple Ridge, where I learned very early on that I was not a daughter, but an obstacle to be managed. It is strange how the past stays with you. You can move 2 hours away, change your hair, and build a career, but the sound of a garage door opening can still make your stomach tighten. For me, the timeline of my life is severed into 2 distinct eras: before Mom died and after Vanessa arrived. My mother passed away from aggressive ovarian cancer when I was 13. The 2 years that followed were a blur of frozen lasagnas brought by pitying neighbors and a silence in our house so loud it felt like static in my ears. My father, Elliot Harrison, was a good man, but he was a man who did not know how to be alone. He was an accountant, a man of numbers and logic, and grief was an equation he could not solve. So, when I was 15, he found a solution. Her name was Vanessa. Vanessa was beautiful in a sharp, curated way. She was 10 years younger than Dad, with blonde hair that never moved and a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes unless there was an audience. When she moved into our house in Maple Ridge, the air changed. The comfortable clutter of my childhood, the stack of magazines on the coffee table, my sneakers by the door, Mom's collection of ceramic owls, vanished overnight. In their place came beige furniture, glass vases filled with decorative stones, and a set of rules that were never written down but were enforced with military precision. The shift in labor was subtle at first. It started with, "Sophie, honey, can you grab these plates?" and evolved into, "Sophie, the dishwasher isn't going to load itself." Within 6 months of their marriage, I had become the unofficial housekeeper. I was 15 years old, juggling high school geometry and biology, yet I was responsible for cooking dinner 4 nights a week, doing the laundry for 3 people, and scrubbing the bathrooms on Saturdays. I remember one Tuesday evening vividly. I was sitting at the kitchen island doing homework while Vanessa stood by the refrigerator, examining a smudge on the stainless steel. Dad was in the living room, watching the 6 o'clock news. Vanessa sighed, a long, suffering sound, and called out to him. "Elliot, darling," she said, her voice dripping with a sweetness that made my skin crawl. "It is so wonderful how Sophie loves to take care of the house. Most teenagers are so lazy, but she really takes pride in it. Look at how she handles the kitchen." I looked up, pen hovering over my notebook. I did not love it. I hated it. I hated the smell of the lemon polish that stung my nose. I hated how the laundry detergent made my hands itch. But before I could speak, Dad walked in, looking relieved. He smiled at me, a tired but grateful smile. "That is great, kiddo," he said, squeezing my shoulder. "It really helps Vanessa out. She is doing so much to make this place nice for us." I swallowed my protest. How could I tell him that 10 minutes ago? She had snapped her fingers at me and pointed to the floor because I had missed a spot while sweeping. That was the dynamic. In front of Elliot, she was the doting stepmother, wrapping an arm around my shoulders and calling me daughter or sweetie. She was performing for an audience of 1. But the moment his car pulled out of the driveway, the mask fell. Her cruelty was not physical, at least not usually. It was cold and verbal, delivered in a low, flat tone that terrified me more than shouting ever could. If I left a glass on the table, she would not just ask me to move it. She would stare at me and say, "Do you think you are a princess, Sophie? Do you think someone is going to follow you around your whole life picking up your trash? If you don't learn to take care of a home, you will die alone. No man wants a slob." She targeted my insecurities with the precision of a surgeon. When I gained a little weight during my junior year, she stopped buying snacks and would only serve me half portions at dinner, loudly claiming she was helping me watch my figure, so I wouldn't be embarrassed at prom. When I got into the honor roll, she asked why I wasn't in the top 1%, asking if I had been distracted by boys instead of focusing on my future. The holidays were the worst. Thanksgiving and Christmas were not celebrations. They were marathons of labor, while other families in Maple Ridge were playing touch football on the lawn or watching parades on television. I was sequestered in the kitchen. I remember the Christmas I was 17. We were hosting 20 people, Dad's colleagues, Vanessa's bridge club friends, and a few neighbors. From 7 in the morning, I was peeling potatoes, basting the turkey, and arranging appetizers on silver platters. My hands were raw from washing dishes because Vanessa insisted that the good china could not go in the dishwasher. Around 2 in the afternoon, the house was full of laughter and the clinking of crystal glasses. I was standing at the sink, sweat sticking my shirt to my back, scrubbing a roasting pan that was caked with burnt grease. My feet ached in my cheap flats. Through the swinging door, I could hear Vanessa holding court in the living room. "Oh, thank you, Susan," I heard Vanessa say, her voice carrying over the jazz music. "It is a lot of work, of course, but I just love hosting. I want everything to be perfect for Elliot and the guests. You know me. I just can't sit still if things aren't right." "You are a wonder, Vanessa," a man's voice replied. "Elliot is a lucky man." I gripped the edge of the sink, tears stinging my eyes. She hadn't peeled a single potato. She hadn't touched a dirty plate. She had spent the morning getting a blowout at the salon and doing her makeup. I wanted to march out there, covered in grease and soap suds, and scream the truth, but I didn't. I knew what would happen. She would look at me with wide, hurt eyes, and Dad would look embarrassed, and later, when everyone was gone, she would make me pay for humiliating her. I did try to tell Dad once. It was the spring of my senior year. I had been accepted into a state university a few hours away, and I was desperate to go. Desperate to live in a dorm and eat terrible cafeteria food just to be free of that house. I found him in his study, looking over tax returns. "Dad," I said, sitting on the edge of the leather sofa, "I need to talk to you about Vanessa." He took off his reading glasses and rubbed the bridge of his nose. He looked older then, the gray spreading through his temples. "What is it, Sophie? Is this about the curfew again?" "No," I said, my voice trembling. "It is about how she treats me, Dad. She makes me do everything, the cleaning, the cooking. She is mean to me when you aren't here. She says terrible things." Elliot sighed, a sound of deep, bone-weary exhaustion. He turned his chair to face me, but he didn't look angry at her. He looked disappointed in me. "Sophie," he said gently, "Vanessa is a perfectionist. I know she can be exacting, but she is just trying to keep everything in order. She came into this family when we were broken. She is trying to fix us. She is trying to mold you into a capable woman." "She treats me like a maid, Dad," I insisted. "She is your mother figure now," he said, his voice hardening slightly. "You need to cut her some slack. It is not easy being a stepmother to a teenage girl. She feels like you reject her efforts. Just try to be more understanding, okay? For me, I just want peace. Sophie, that is all I want." Peace, that was his currency. He would trade my happiness, my dignity, and my childhood for a quiet house. I realized then that I was alone. He wasn't going to save me. If I forced him to choose, he would choose the wife who slept in his bed, not the daughter who reminded him of a dead woman. So, I learned the art of silence. I learned to make myself small. I stayed in that house through college because Vanessa convinced Dad that paying for a dorm was a waste of money when the university was commutable. Even though the commute was 90 minutes each way, I spent 4 years driving back and forth, missing study groups and parties, coming home to a list of chores on the counter and a cold dinner in the fridge. I worked part-time jobs, saving every dollar I could, hiding cash in a hollowed-out biology textbook on my shelf. I knew I had to get out. The house in Maple Ridge was a beautiful 2-story trap, and Vanessa was the warden holding the keys. But the moment that truly severed my emotional tether to that house, the moment that turned my resentment into a cold, hard resolve, happened 6 months before I finally moved out. It was a Tuesday night. Late, I had come downstairs to get a glass of water. The house was dark, but light spilled from under the door of the study. Dad was away on a business trip in Chicago, so I assumed Vanessa had left a light on. But as I passed the door, I heard her voice. She was on the phone, her tone low and conspiratorial. I stopped. I knew I should keep walking, but something in her voice made me freeze. It wasn't her usual commanding tone. It was greedy. "No, he doesn't suspect anything," Vanessa was saying. There was a pause as she listened to the person on the other end. "I have been working on him for months about the portfolio. He trusts me completely with the accounts now." My heart hammered against my ribs. I pressed myself against the wall, holding my breath. "Don't worry about her," Vanessa said, and I knew instantly she was talking about me. Her voice dropped to a whisper that was more chilling than a scream. "She is weak. She is just like her mother, soft." She laughed then, a dry, humorless sound. "Just let me handle the timing. Only until he signs all the papers. Then I keep everything. The house, the investments, the insurance. The girl will have to fend for herself. She can clean toilets for a living for all I care. She is certainly trained for it." I backed away, my bare feet silent on the hardwood floor. I retreated to my room, closed the door, and sat on my bed in the dark. My hands were shaking so hard I nearly dropped my water glass. "Once he signs the papers, I keep everything." She wasn't just mean. She was planning something. She was systematically positioning herself to erase me from my father's life and legacy, and my father, the man who just wanted peace, was handing her the pen. I never told Dad what I heard. By then, I knew it wouldn't matter. He would think I was making it up to sabotage his marriage. Instead, I doubled my shifts at the coffee shop. I saved until I had enough for a deposit on the apartment in Richmond. I moved out 3 months later, leaving behind a perfectly clean room and a father who seemed relieved to have one less source of tension in the house. I thought escaping was the end of it. I thought if I stayed away, built my own life, and kept my distance, I would be safe. I thought I had left the drama of Maple Ridge behind me. But you cannot outrun a fire that is burning the foundation of your home. You can only stand back and wait for the structure to collapse. And collapse it would. I just didn't know that the match would be lit 5 years later, on the night of my father's 60th birthday party. The vibration of my phone on the coffee table was a sound I had grown to dread. It was a Tuesday afternoon, and the sunlight was streaming through the windows of my apartment, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. I was curled up on my sofa with a manuscript I needed to edit, enjoying the rare silence of a work-from-home day. Then, the screen lit up. Vanessa. The message was brief, commanding, and devoid of any warmth. "Be at the house by 4 on Saturday. Your father turns 60. Do not make me ask twice. We have guests coming at 6. My thumb hovered over the screen. I was 28 years old. I paid my own rent. I had a team of people who looked up to me at work. I did not have to take orders from a woman who had spent the last decade making me feel like an intruder in my own life. I started typing a refusal, a polite but firm decline citing work obligations. But before I could hit send, the phone rang. It was Dad. I answered, expecting him to be calling on Vanessa's behalf, perhaps to reinforce her command. Instead, his voice sounded thin, stretched tight like a wire about to snap. "Sophie?" he asked. There was a heavy pause, the sound of him exhaling a lungful of smoke, though he had quit cigarettes 10 years ago. Are you coming this weekend? For the birthday? I don't know, Dad, I said, leaning back against the cushions. Work is crazy right now, and honestly, I do not know if I have the energy for one of Vanessa's productions. Please, he said. The word was soft, almost a whisper. It stopped me cold. My father was a proud man, a man who rarely asked for anything. I just want a peaceful evening, all of us together, just one night where everyone gets along. It would mean a lot to me, kiddo. 60 feels heavy. Guilt is a powerful tether. I could say no to Vanessa, but I could not say no to the exhaustion in his voice. Okay, Dad, I said, hating myself a little for capitulating. I will be there. Saturday arrived with a gray, oppressive sky. I drove the familiar route to Maple Ridge, my stomach tightening with every mile marker that brought me closer to the suburbs. When I pulled into the driveway of the house where I grew up, I saw that the transformation was already complete. The lawn was manicured to within an inch of its life. There were fairy lights strung through the oak trees, tasteful and expensive. It looked like a spread in a lifestyle magazine, perfect and soulless. I walked through the front door and was immediately assaulted by the smell of expensive perfume and roasting meat. Vanessa was in the foyer, adjusting a massive floral arrangement. She didn't look at me when I entered. She just held out a clipboard. Finally, she said, checking her watch. You are 10 minutes late. Go to the kitchen. The caterers dropped off the appetizers, but they need to be plated. The ice buckets need filling, and check the wine glasses for spots. I found 3 with watermarks earlier. Honestly, Sophie, if you are going to be here, make yourself useful. I took the list, my jaw set tight. Happy to see you too, Vanessa. She turned then, flashing a smile that was all teeth and no warmth. Do not start, Sophie. This is your father's night. Do not ruin it with your attitude. For the next 3 hours, I ceased to be a guest or a daughter. I became the help. While Vanessa drifted through the house in a shimmering silk dress, greeting early arrivals and laughing her tinkling, practiced laugh. I was sweating in the kitchen. I arranged shrimp on platters. I wiped down counters. I uncorked bottle after bottle of wine. Every time I tried to step out into the living room to say hello to an aunt or a family friend, Vanessa would appear at my elbow, her nails digging slightly into my arm, whispering that the trash needed emptying or the dip was running low. By 8 in the evening, the house was packed. The air was thick with chatter and jazz music. Dad was in the center of the room, holding a scotch, looking dapper but undeniably tired. He smiled when people toasted him, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. He looked like a man playing a role he had grown weary of. I was circulating with a tray of empty glasses, trying to make my way to the sink, when I passed a group of men standing near the fireplace. One of them was Arthur Miller, an old colleague of Dad's who had clearly enjoyed the open bar a little too enthusiastically. He was swaying slightly, clutching a tumbler of bourbon, his voice booming over the music. You are a lucky man, Elliot, Arthur roared, clapping my father on the back. 60 years old and sitting on a gold mine, and good on you for the estate planning. I heard you are finally setting up that trust properly. Vanessa, who had been standing nearby accepting a compliment on her curtains, froze. She turned toward Arthur, her smile faltering for a fraction of a second. Oh, Arthur, she said, her voice high and brittle. Let's not talk about boring legal matters tonight. Arthur ignored her, oblivious in his drunkenness. Nonsense! It is noble, putting the bulk of the liquid assets into the Emily Harrison Foundation and ensuring the girl gets the portfolio. He gestured vaguely in my direction with his glass, splashing a little amber liquid onto the carpet. Most men would just leave it all to the new wife and call it a day. Takes a man of principle to honor the past like that. The silence that fell over our little circle was absolute. I froze, the tray of glasses heavy in my hands. The Emily Harrison Foundation. That was my mother's name. I had never heard of such a foundation. I looked at Vanessa. For one heartbeat, the mask slipped completely. Her face contorted into a look of pure, unadulterated panic. followed instantly by a flash of venomous rage directed at my father. But then, just as quickly, the mask slammed back into place. She forced a laugh, a shrill sound that grated on the ears. "Arthur, you are drunk," she said, linking her arm through Dad's. "Elliot hasn't finalized anything yet. You are confusing him with someone else." She pulled Dad away, practically dragging him toward the other side of the room, her grip on his tuxedo jacket white-knuckled. Dad didn't say a word. He just let himself be led away, his eyes fixed on the floor. The rest of the party passed in a blur of tension. I stayed in the kitchen, washing dishes that weren't mine to wash, my mind racing. Had Dad really done that? Was he planning to secure my future and honor Mom, despite Vanessa's control? The hope was a small, fragile thing, fluttering in my chest. By 11 at night, the last guest had stumbled out the door. The house fell into a heavy, ominous silence. The living room was a wreck of crumpled napkins and empty glasses. But the kitchen was the worst. It looked like a bomb had gone off. I was at the sink, scrubbing a roasting pan, my back aching. I heard the click of heels on the tile. Vanessa entered the kitchen. She didn't start cleaning. She leaned against the island, her arms crossed, staring at my back. "You told him to say that," she said. Her voice was low, devoid of the sweetness she used in public. I turned off the tap and faced her. "What?" "Arthur," she spat, "you planted that seed. You have been whispering in Elliot's ear, haven't you? Whining about how poor you are, how hard your life is, trying to guilt him into cutting me out." "I haven't spoken to Arthur in 5 years," I said, wiping my hands on a towel. "And I don't talk to Dad about his money. Unlike you, I don't care about the portfolio." "Liar," Vanessa hissed. She pushed off the island and took a step toward me. "You have always been a greedy little brat, waiting for him to die so you can cash in. You think I don't see how you look at this house? You think it belongs to you?" "It was my mother's house," I said quietly. It was the wrong thing to say. Vanessa's face twisted. She closed the distance between us in 2 strides. "Your mother is dead, and if you think for 1 second that I'm going to let you and your pathetic little memories steal what I have earned, you are delusional. I have taken care of him for 10 years. I put up with his moods. I put up with you. I am not going to be left with scraps while you play the grieving daughter." "You are drunk, Vanessa," I said, trying to step around her. "We can talk about this in the morning." "No!" She shoved me. It wasn't a playful push. It was a hard, violent shove that sent me stumbling back. My lower back hit the granite edge of the counter with a sickening thud. Pain radiated up my spine. "You are poison!" she screamed, her composure shattering completely. "You are a burden. Elliot knows it. He is just too weak to say it, but I am not. I am going to make sure you never see a dime. I will have him rewrite that will tomorrow if I have to hold his hand to the paper myself." My heart was hammering in my throat. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the desperation underneath the rage. She was terrified. Arthur's comment had terrified her. "If he wants to leave money to Mom's foundation, that is his choice," I said, my voice shaking. "You can't force him." "Watch me," she sneered. She stepped closer, pinning me against the cabinets. Her perfume was cloying, suffocating. "I can make him do whatever I want. He is an old man. Sophie, he needs me. You? You are just a reminder of a dead woman he is trying to forget." "Get away from me," I warned, gripping the edge of the counter. "Or what?" She raised her hand. Her palm was open, her fingers rigid. It wasn't a gesture of warning. She was going to slap me. She was going to strike me right there in the kitchen, in the house where I grew up. "If you hit me," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, loud and clear in the echoing kitchen, "I will call the police. I am not a child anymore. Vanessa, I am 28 years old. That would be assault, and I will press charges." Vanessa hesitated. Her hand hovered in the air, trembling with the effort of restraining herself. Her eyes were wild, dilated with adrenaline. "You wouldn't dare," she breathed. "Try me," I challenged. For a terrible moment, time seemed to suspend. The hum of the refrigerator was deafening. The drip of the faucet measured out the seconds. 1, 2, 3. Then, from the doorway, a floorboard creaked. We both froze. Slowly. Vanessa lowered her hand. Though she didn't step back, we turned our heads. Elliot was standing in the threshold between the dining room and the kitchen. He had taken off his tie, the top button of his shirt undone. He looked older than I had ever seen him. His face was gray, his eyes shadowed. He was looking directly at us. He had seen it all. He had seen his wife pin his daughter against the counter. He had seen the raised hand. He had heard the threat. I waited for him to shout. I waited for him to rush forward, to pull her off me, to defend me. I waited for the explosion. But it didn't come. Dad stood there for 3 seconds, motionless. His eyes moved from Vanessa's face to mine, and then to Vanessa's still raised hand. There was no anger in his expression. There was only a profound, devastating realization. It was the look of a man who finally accepts a truth he has been denying for a decade. "Elliot," Vanessa started, her voice shifting instantly into a whimper, dropping her hand as if it burned. She was attacking me. I was just defending myself. She is hysterical." Dad didn't look at her. He didn't even blink. "Stop," he said. It wasn't a shout. It was spoken at a normal volume, but the weight of it hit the floor like lead. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't ask for sides. He turned his back on us. My stomach dropped. He's walking away. I thought, panic rising. He is going to ignore it again. He is going to go to bed and pretend this didn't happen. But he didn't go to the bedroom. He walked across the hallway into his study. The door was left open. Vanessa and I stood in the kitchen, paralyzed. We could hear him moving. We heard the distinct, heavy clack whir of the hidden wall safe being opened. The keypad beeped, a sequence I didn't know. Then came the heavy metallic groan of the safe door swinging back. Vanessa's face went white. She took a step toward the hallway. "Elliot?" He emerged a moment later. He had put on his heavy wool coat over his tuxedo shirt. In his left hand, he held a thick manila file folder. In his right hand, clamped tight against his side, was a black metal box. It was about the size of a dictionary, battered and old, with a keyhole on the front. I recognized that box. It used to sit on the top shelf of his closet when I was a child. I hadn't seen it in 15 years. He walked back toward the kitchen, but he didn't enter. He stopped in the hallway, looking at us one last time. He didn't look at Vanessa. He looked only at me. "Dad?" I whispered, pushing myself off the counter. He didn't answer my question. He simply looked me in the eye, his gaze intense and lucid, stripping away the exhaustion for one brief second. "Tonight," he said, his voice raspy. "You remember tonight, Sophie?" And then, he turned and walked to the front door. "Elliot!" Vanessa screamed, the sound tearing from her throat. "Where are you going? You can't leave. We have guests staying in the guest house. Elliot!" He opened the heavy oak door. The cool night air rushed in, swirling through the heated tension of the house. He stepped out onto the porch, the black box tucked firmly under his arm, and pulled the door shut behind him. The latch clicked. Silence rushed back into the house, heavier than before. Vanessa stood trembling in the middle of the kitchen, staring at the empty doorway. I stood by the sink, my heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. He was gone. He had walked in, seen his wife about to beat his daughter, and he had taken a box and left. He hadn't fought. He hadn't yelled. He had just removed himself. I didn't know it then, standing in the wreckage of his 60th birthday. But that silence was not a retreat. It was a strategy. And the black box he carried into the night contained the only thing that mattered anymore. The silence that followed my father's departure was heavier than the door slamming shut. For 3 agonizing days, I heard nothing. I returned to my apartment in Richmond, my phone sitting on my desk like an unexploded bomb. I sent 4 text messages. "Dad, are you okay? Please just let me know where you are. I am sorry about the fight. Please call me. Dad? The status under each message changed to read. He had seen them. He was looking at his screen, seeing my desperation, and choosing not to type back. That small, gray confirmation text drove me to the brink of madness. I oscillated between blinding anger and a deep, shameful guilt. I told myself he was punishing me. I told myself he was embarrassed. I imagined him sitting in a hotel room somewhere, the black metal box on the nightstand, waiting for his temper to cool before he went back to Vanessa. I assumed this was just another chapter in the long, exhausting saga of the Harrison family drama. I was wrong. It was Wednesday morning, a gray, drizzly day that made the city skyline look like a watercolor painting left out in the rain. I was at my office, staring blankly at a marketing brief for a new coffee brand, when my cell phone rang. It was a number I did not recognize, with a local area code. I picked it up on the second ring. This is Sophie. Sophie Harrison? The voice was male, elderly, and gravely serious. Yes. This is Jonathan Keller. I was your father's attorney for many years. My stomach dropped. I knew the name. Mr. Keller had handled the deed when we bought the house in Maple Ridge 20 years ago. He was a man of paperwork and dry pleasantries. He did not make social calls. Is he okay? I asked, standing up. My chair scraped loudly against the floor, drawing the attention of my office mate. I am very sorry to make this call. Sophie, Mr. Keller said, his voice softening in that practiced, professional way people use when they are delivering devastation. Your father passed away early this morning. The world did not stop. The phones in the office kept ringing. A car honked outside on Broad Street. The coffee machine in the break room hissed. But for me, the air was suddenly sucked out of the room. What? I whispered. No, that is not possible. I just saw him Saturday. It appears to have been a massive cardiac event, Mr. Keller continued, treating the facts with a gentle distance. He was driving on Route 15, near a town called Farmville. It is about 2 hours west of here. He pulled over to the shoulder, and, well, a state trooper found the car around 6 this morning. Farmville? I repeated the word stupidly. Why was he in Farmville? We don't know anyone in Farmville. I do not know. Sophie, the coroner said it was likely instant. He did not suffer. I sank back into my chair. The image of my father flashed in my mind. Not the man laughing at a barbecue, or the man teaching me to ride a bike. I saw him as he was on Saturday night. The gray face, the tuxedo shirt with the top button undone, the way he had looked at me in the hallway, clutching that black metal box like a shield. Tonight, you remember tonight, Sophie? Those were the last words he ever said to me. Does Vanessa know? I asked. I have just spoken with her, Mr. Keller said. She is distraught. There will be arrangements to make. I thought you should hear it from me first. The days between the call and the funeral were a blur of black dresses and forced casseroles. I moved through them like a sleepwalker. I kept waiting to wake up. I kept waiting for Dad to call and say it was a mistake. But the obituary in the Richmond Times-Dispatch was real. Elliot Harrison, 60, beloved husband and father. The funeral was held on a Monday. The sky was a relentless, weeping gray, matching the mood of the crowd gathered at the Eternal Rest Cemetery. It was a large turnout. Dad was well liked in the community, a steady accountant who had done taxes for half the neighborhood. But the funeral was not about Dad. It was the Vanessa show. She stood by the open grave, looking tragically beautiful in a fitted black dress and a veil that was just sheer enough to show her tear-streaked face. She clung to the arm of the pastor, sobbing audibly at all the right moments. When she threw the first handful of dirt onto the mahogany casket, she fell to her knees, a performance so raw and convincing that half the attendees were wiping their eyes. "She is so strong," I heard a woman whisper behind me. "To lose him so suddenly, and she was so devoted to him." "A saint," another voice agreed. "She took such good care of him." I stood 10 feet back from the main circle of mourners. I was the daughter, yet I felt like an intruder. People glanced at me with pity, but also with a strange suspicion, I could see the question in their eyes. Why isn't she up there holding Vanessa's hand? Why is she standing so far away? They didn't know. They didn't know about the kitchen. They didn't know about the raised hand or the shoved shoulder. After the service, the reception was held at the house in Maple Ridge. Walking back into that house felt like walking into a crime scene where the evidence had already been scrubbed clean. The kitchen was spotless. The spot where I had been pinned against the counter was now covered with a platter of ham biscuits. I stood in the corner of the living room, clutching a glass of lukewarm water. Relatives I hadn't seen in years came up to me, offering stiff hugs and hollow platitudes. "He was so proud of you," my Aunt Linda said, patting my arm. Then she lowered her voice. "You know, you really should go talk to Vanessa. She feels very alone right now. She mentioned that things had been tense between you two lately. You shouldn't hold grudges now that he is gone. Sophie." I stared at her. "Tense? Is that what she said?" "She said you guys had a little spat at the birthday party," Linda said, looking uncomfortable. "Something about money? Honey, grief makes people say things they don't mean. Just make peace. For your dad." I felt a surge of bile in my throat. Vanessa had already spun the narrative. She had turned the night of his departure into a little spat about money, casting me as the greedy daughter and herself as the forgiving victim. I looked across the room. Vanessa was sitting on the sofa, surrounded by a court of sympathetic neighbors. She was dabbing her eyes with a handkerchief. She looked up, met my gaze, and held it. Her eyes were dry and hard as flint. I needed to know. I walked over to her, ignoring the hush that fell over the group. "Vanessa," I said. She looked up at me, her expression shifting instantly to one of fragile exhaustion. "Sophie, I'm glad you are still here." "Where is the box?" I asked. My voice was quiet, but in the sudden silence of the room, it carried. "The what?" Vanessa asked, blinking. "The black metal box," I said. "The one Dad took with him when he left on Saturday night. He had it under his arm. Where is it?" Vanessa shook her head, looking confused. "I don't know what you're talking about, sweetie. Your father left with nothing but the clothes on his back. The police didn't give me any box, just his wallet and his watch." "I saw him take it from the safe," I insisted, my voice rising slightly. "He took the box and a file." "Sophie, please," Vanessa said, her voice trembling. She looked around at the guests for support. "Not now. Not today. Please don't start imagining things. You are upset." "I am not imagining it." "Shh." Aunt Linda was at my elbow again, steering me away. "Come on, Sophie, let's get some air." I pulled away from her. I knew what I had seen, but looking at the faces around me, faces that looked at me with pity and judgment, I realized I had no ground to stand on. I was the hysterical daughter making a scene at the funeral. Vanessa was the grieving widow. I left the reception early. I sat in my car down the street, watching the house, waiting for the guests to leave. I needed to see the safe. 2 days later, I got a text from Vanessa. "Come by the house tomorrow at 10. We need to read the will." I arrived at 9:55. The house was quiet. The funeral flowers were already wilting on the porch. Vanessa let me in. She was wearing a silk robe and holding a cup of coffee. She didn't offer me any. "Let's get this over with," she said, turning and walking toward the study. The study smelled of Dad, old paper, tobacco, and leather. It broke my heart to step inside. Vanessa walked behind the large oak desk and sat in his chair. It looked wrong. It looked like a usurpation. "I spoke with Mr. Keller," Vanessa said, placing a single document on the desk. "Apparently, your father did not have a copy of his will with the firm. He preferred to keep the original here, in the house." "In the safe," I said. "Yes," Vanessa said. She swiveled the chair and pointed to the wall safe behind her. The door was open. I walked over and looked inside. It was empty, completely empty. No cash, no passports, and definitely no black metal box. "Where is it?" I asked, turning to her. "The box. It was right there." "Sophie, stop with the box," Vanessa snapped. There was never a box. You are remembering things that didn't happen because you are guilty about causing him stress the night he died. The accusation hit me like a slap. I didn't cause him stress. You were the one attacking me. I was disciplining a disrespectful child, Vanessa said smoothly, and Elliot was heartbroken that you would treat me that way. That is why he left. He needed to get away from your drama. She tapped the document on the desk. This is the will. He signed it 6 months ago. It was in the safe. I picked up the paper. My hands were shaking. It was a last will and testament, typed on standard legal paper. I skipped the legalese and went straight to the distribution of assets. I, Elliot Harrison, being of sound mind, do hereby leave the entirety of my estate, including the property at 442 Elm Street, all investment accounts, and personal property, to my beloved wife, Vanessa Harrison. I scanned down. There was a small paragraph at the bottom. To my daughter, Sophie Harrison, I leave my love. As she is a gainfully employed adult with a stable life, I feel confident she does not require financial assistance. I stared at the signature at the bottom. It was Dad's signature. The looping E, the sharp H. It looked real. There was a notary stamp next to it, dated from a notary public in Richmond I didn't recognize. This doesn't make sense, I said, looking up. Arthur Miller said Dad was setting up a trust. He said he was putting money into a foundation in Mom's name. Vanessa let out a short, sharp laugh. Arthur Miller is a drunk, and your father told people what they wanted to hear to avoid conflict. He knew you were grasping. Sophie, he knew you felt entitled to his money. He wanted to make sure I was taken care of. He knew I was the one who was actually there for him. He wouldn't cut me out, I whispered. Not like this. He didn't cut you out, Vanessa said, standing up. He treated you like an adult. You have a job. You have an apartment. Why do you need his retirement money? Are you that selfish? She walked around the desk and stood in front of me. This is legal. Sophie, it is notarized. It is done. The house is mine. The accounts are mine. If you want to take a few sentimental items, some books, or pictures, you can pack a box today. But otherwise, I am going to need you to respect my privacy and give me space to grieve. I looked at the document again. It was perfect, too perfect, and the safe was empty. My mind raced back to Saturday night, Dad opening the safe, taking the box, taking a file. Tonight, you remember tonight. If this will was in the safe, why didn't he take it? Or did he take the real will, and this was what was left? Or was this a forgery? But I had no proof. The box was gone. Dad was dead. And looking at Vanessa's cold, triumphant face, I realized she held all the cards. I want Mom's cookbook, I said. It was the only thing I could think of. And the old photo albums. Fine, Vanessa waved a hand dismissively. Take them. Just be out within an hour. I have a realtor coming to look at the property for an appraisal. You are selling the house? I asked, shocked. He hasn't even been buried a week. It is too big for one person, she said, turning her back on me. And too many bad memories. I packed a cardboard box in a daze. I went to the attic and found the box of Mom's old things that Vanessa had forced Dad to hide away years ago. I took the cookbook. I took a stack of albums. I took a few of Dad's old sweaters that still smelled like him. As I walked out of the house, carrying the meager inheritance of my life, I passed the kitchen. I stopped and looked at the counter. I felt a strange sensation. Not just sadness, but a cold, vibrating anger. Dad didn't die of a heart attack because of stress. He died doing something. He was driving to Farmville. Why? What was in Farmville? And where was the box? Vanessa watched me from the porch as I loaded the box into my trunk. She looked like the queen of a kingdom she had finally conquered. Goodbye, Sophie, she called out. Don't be a stranger, but call before you come over. I got into my car and locked the door. I looked at the house one last time. It looked formidable, a fortress of lies. It is not over, I whispered to the empty car. I drove away from Maple Ridge, feeling small and defeated. I thought the story had ended. I thought the villain had won. I didn't know then that the cardboard box in my passenger seat held a secret that was about to blow the roof off Vanessa's perfect life. I didn't know that the black box wasn't gone. It was just waiting. And I didn't know that my father, the quiet accountant, had prepared a contingency plan that was smarter and crueler than anything Vanessa could have imagined. The arrival of the first legal letter was not dramatic. It did not come with a sinister soundtrack or a clap of thunder. It arrived on a Tuesday morning, tucked between a coupon flyer for a pizza chain and my electric bill. It was a thick, cream-colored envelope with the return address of a law firm in downtown Richmond. Bradshaw, Miller and Associates. I opened it at my kitchen counter, sipping lukewarm coffee. As I read the first paragraph, the mug slipped from my fingers and shattered on the floor. I barely noticed the hot liquid splashing onto my socks. Dear Ms. Harrison, we represent Mrs. Vanessa Harrison regarding the estate of the late Elliot Harrison. It has come to our attention that during your unauthorized visit to the property on April 12th, you removed several items from the premises. While Mrs. Harrison graciously allowed you to retrieve personal mementos, it has been discovered that several sensitive financial documents and files regarding Mr. Harrison's estate are now missing from the home office. We formally demand the immediate return of these materials. Furthermore, you are hereby ordered to cease any and all interference with the probate process. Failure to return the misappropriated documents within 48 hours will result in legal action to recover said property. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely hold the paper. Unauthorized visit? She had invited me. Misappropriated documents? I had taken a cardboard box filled with 30-year-old photo albums and a grease-stained cookbook. I understood immediately what she was doing. She knew documents were missing, because Dad had taken them that night, but she could not admit that Dad had removed them, because that would raise questions about why he left. So, she was pinning their disappearance on me. It was a masterstroke of manipulation. She was using the missing files to paint me as a thief, while simultaneously covering her own tracks regarding whatever Dad had actually taken. I called the number on the letterhead immediately. A receptionist put me through to a voicemail. I left a message, my voice trembling with rage, stating clearly that I had taken nothing but personal effects and that Vanessa knew exactly what was in that box. But the legal assault was just the opening salvo. The real war was happening on a battlefield I had not anticipating defending. My phone screen. Later that afternoon, I received a notification on Facebook. It was from a cousin on my father's side, a woman named Beatrice, whom I had not spoken to since Christmas. I cannot believe you. Sophie, after everything he did for you. I frowned, confused. I clicked on her profile, and then I saw it. She had shared a post from Vanessa. Vanessa's Facebook page had been transformed into a shrine to her grief. Her profile picture was a black and white photo of her and Dad looking lovingly into each other's eyes at a gala. But the post pinned to the top of her feed was a long, text-heavy lament that had already garnered over 200 reactions and 50 comments. It read, I never thought I would be writing this. Losing Elliot has been the darkest moment of my life. He was my rock, my soulmate. But what makes this grief unbearable is the betrayal that comes from within the family. It is heartbreaking when the people Elliot loved, or tried to love, care more about what is in the will than the man who is gone. I am trying to grieve, but I am being harassed for assets, for property, for things that do not matter when a heart is broken. Please pray for me as I deal with not just the loss of my husband, but the cruelty of those who only remember they have a father when it is time to divide the check. Grief, family, betrayal, widow life. She didn't name me. She didn't have to. Everyone in our extended family, everyone in Dad's social circle, knew exactly who those who only remember they have a father referred to. I scrolled through the comments, feeling a cold sickness spreading in my stomach. Oh, Vanessa, I am so sorry. Some people have no shame. Stay strong. Honey, the truth always comes out. Money reveals character. I always knew his daughter was difficult. He used to look so stressed talking about her. Don't let them take what is yours. Vanessa. I felt like I was suffocating. These were people who had known me since I was a child. people who had eaten at our table, and with a few vague, carefully crafted sentences, Vanessa had turned them all against me. She had rewritten history, in her version. I wasn't the daughter who was bullied and used as a maid. I was the estranged, greedy vulture circling the carcass. My phone began to buzz incessantly. It wasn't just Beatrice. It was an aunt from Ohio. It was one of Dad's old golfing buddies. Sophie, I hope what I am hearing isn't true. Let the poor woman grieve. Your father would be ashamed of this behavior. Please stop harassing Vanessa. She is fragile right now. I threw my phone onto the sofa, screaming into the empty air of my apartment. I am not harassing her. She is harassing me. But the truth didn't matter. The narrative mattered, and Vanessa was controlling the narrative with the precision of a PR crisis manager. That evening, my friend Jessica sent me a screenshot. Jessica still lived in Maple Ridge, a few streets over from my childhood home. Soph, I shouldn't send this, but you need to see what she is saying in the neighborhood group, Jessica wrote. The image was from the Maple Ridge Community Watch private Facebook group. Vanessa had posted there too. Dear neighbors, if you see a silver sedan parked near my driveway, please alert me or call security. I have been dealing with aggressive family members trying to gain entry to the home to remove items. As a woman living alone now, I am feeling very unsafe. Thank you for looking out for me. My car was a silver sedan. She was effectively branding me a stalker in the neighborhood where I learned to ride a bicycle. She was terrified that I would come back, not to steal, but to look for whatever Dad had hidden. She was fortifying the castle. I couldn't take it anymore. I picked up my phone and dialed Vanessa's number. I didn't care about legal protocol. I needed to hear her say it. She answered on the second ring. This is Vanessa. Her voice was calm, devoid of the tearful tremor she used online. Are you insane? I demanded, my voice shaking. Telling people I am a thief? Telling the neighbors I am a security threat? I took a cookbook, Vanessa, a cookbook. You took financial leverage, she said coolly. Or you tried to. I know you. Sophie, I know you think there is money hidden somewhere. I know you think you are entitled to a payout. I am entitled to the truth, I shouted. I know what happened that night. I know Dad left because of you. I know he took a box, and I know that will you showed me is garbage. If he wanted you to have anything, Sophie, it would be on paper, she interrupted, her voice dropping to that low, steely tone I remembered from my teenage years. He was an accountant. He documented everything. The fact that there is nothing for you means he wanted you to have nothing. Why can't you accept that he just didn't care about you as much as you thought? The cruelty of it took my breath away. He loved me, I whispered. He tolerated you, she corrected. And now he is gone, and I am the one with the deed, the titles, and the law on my side. So here is how this is going to go. You are going to stop calling. You are going to stop asking questions. You are going to go back to your little apartment and your little job and leave me alone. Because if you don't, I have more than just Facebook posts up my sleeve. I will sue you for emotional distress. I will sue you for the stolen documents. I will bury you in legal fees until you are bankrupt. Do we understand each other? You are a monster, I said. I am a survivor, she replied. Goodbye, Sophie. The line went dead. 2 days later, a second letter arrived. This one was a formal notice of trespass. It stated that if I set foot on the property at 442 Elm Street, the police would be called immediately to arrest me. It was signed by the chief of police of Maple Ridge, a man who had played poker with my father for 20 years. She had gotten to him too. I was cornered. I sat on the floor of my living room, surrounded by the silence of my apartment. The isolation was absolute. My family thought I was greedy. My neighbors thought I was dangerous. My father was dead, and his memory was being weaponized to destroy me. I opened my laptop. I opened a blank document. My fingers hovered over the keys. I wanted to write it all down. I wanted to post everything on Facebook. I wanted to scream, "She tried to hit me!" He walked out on her. He took a black box. But I stopped. I looked at how Vanessa's posts were written. They were emotional, but they were vague. They played on universal sympathies: the grieving widow, the ungrateful child. If I posted a frantic, detailed rant about secret boxes and domestic abuse, I wouldn't look like a victim. I would look unhinged. I would look exactly like the unstable daughter she was painting me to be. She wants me to explode. I realized she wants me to look crazy. I closed the laptop. I couldn't fight her on her turf. She was better at lying than I was at telling the truth. I felt a crushing weight of hopelessness. Maybe she was right. Maybe there was no box. Maybe Dad had just driven away to clear his head and the box was just nothing. Maybe he really had left me nothing. I looked over at the corner of the room, where the cardboard box I had retrieved from the house sat. The stolen goods. I crawled over to it. I needed to feel close to someone who actually loved me. I needed my mother. I opened the flaps. The smell of dust and vanilla hit me. Inside were the things Vanessa had deemed trash: my mother's old apron, a stack of photo albums from the 90s, and her favorite cookbook, a battered binder stuffed with handwritten index cards and magazine clippings. I pulled the cookbook out. It was heavy, the spine held together with duct tape. I opened it to the first page. Property of Emily Harrison, written in her looping, elegant cursive. I turned the pages, letting the tears finally fall. Here was her recipe for lasagna. Here was the chocolate cake she made for my 10th birthday. Here were the stains of olive oil and tomato sauce, the physical ghosts of her hands. I wasn't looking for anything. I was just seeking comfort. I turned to the section marked meats. I was looking for her meatloaf recipe, the one Dad used to love, the one Vanessa had refused to ever make because she said it was peasant food. I found the page, but as I flattened the book to read the card, I noticed something odd. The page opposite the meatloaf recipe was thick, thicker than the others. It wasn't 2 pages stuck together with grease. It was an envelope, taped carefully to the back of a divider. My heart skipped a beat. I peeled the tape back. It was a plain white envelope, yellowed slightly with age. But the writing on the front was not my mother's. It was sharp, angular, and unmistakably familiar. For Sophie. Read this when I'm gone. It was Dad's handwriting. I stopped breathing. The air in the room seemed to freeze. I stared at the envelope, my mind reeling. Vanessa had checked the safe. She had checked the bank accounts. She had checked the files. But she had never checked the cookbook, because Vanessa didn't cook. She viewed the kitchen as a stage for giving orders, not a place of creation. She had dismissed this box as junk, as sentimental trash for a weak daughter. My father knew that. He knew exactly who she was, and he knew exactly where she would never, ever look. I wiped my hands on my jeans. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I picked up the envelope. It felt heavy. There was something hard inside. I wasn't crazy. He hadn't forgotten me. He hadn't left me nothing. I slid my finger under the flap of the envelope. The paper tore with a sharp, distinct sound that echoed in the quiet apartment. The sound of a lock turning. The sound of a war beginning. Outside, the rain was coming down in sheets, hammering against the brick exterior of my apartment building with a rhythmic, relentless violence that matched the storm inside my head. It was a Thursday night, 3 days after Vanessa had threatened to sue me for everything I owned. The city of Richmond was washed in gray, the streetlights blurring into smears of orange on the wet pavement below my window. I sat on the floor of my living room, the only light coming from a floor lamp that cast long, stretching shadows across the hardwood. In front of me sat the cardboard box, the stolen property that had sparked a legal war. It was just a battered moving box, the corners soft with age, labeled Emily's Kitchen in my father's blocky handwriting from 15 years ago. I had opened it to find comfort, to escape the suffocating reality of lawyers and accusations. I wanted to smell my mother, and I found her in the scent that wafted up from the box, a mixture of dried oregano, old vanilla, and the distinct dusty smell of aging paper. I pulled out her old rolling pin, the heavy marble one she used to make pie crusts. I found her apron, the yellow one with the sunflower pattern, still stained with a drop of chocolate near the pocket, and at the bottom, resting like a heavy anchor, was her binder. It wasn't a printed cookbook. It was a 3-ring binder, bursting at the seams, stuffed with magazine clippings, index cards, and handwritten notes. This book was the history of our family before Vanessa. It was the physical evidence that a woman named Emily Harrison had once run that kitchen, that she had cooked with love, and that we had been happy. I opened it, the metal rings creaking in the quiet room. I turned the pages slowly, letting the memories wash over me. Here was the recipe for the lemon bars we made for the church bake sale. Here was the instruction card for the Thanksgiving turkey, with Dad's handwriting in the margins calculating cooking times per pound. I flipped to the main courses section. I was looking for her meatloaf. It was a simple recipe. Nothing fancy. Ground beef, breadcrumbs, a specific brand of onion soup mix, but it had been my favorite meal as a child. Vanessa had banned it from the house the month she moved in, calling it peasant food and replacing it with poached salmon and quinoa. I found the page. The index card was splattered with tomato sauce. The ink slightly faded. I smiled. A genuine, painful smile, tracing the loop of my mother's L in loaf. But as I went to turn the page, I felt something. The page behind the meatloaf recipe was stiff. It didn't bend like the others. I looked closer. Taped securely to the back of the plastic page protector, hidden completely from view unless you were specifically looking at this exact recipe, was a white envelope. My breath hitched. I froze, my finger hovering over the tape. Vanessa never cooked. She certainly never made meatloaf. She would never, in a million years, have opened this binder to this specific page. I peeled the tape back carefully. The adhesive was old and yellowed, coming away with a dry rasp. The envelope slid into my hand. It was light, but there was something hard inside. I turned it over, on the front, written in blue ink that looked relatively fresh compared to the faded recipes around it, was my name. For Sophie. And underneath, in a shaky script that made my heart slam against my ribs, "Please read this when I am gone." It was Dad's handwriting. I stared at the envelope for a long time, my hands trembling so hard the paper shook. The rain lashed against the window, louder now, but the sound seemed miles away. The world had narrowed down to this rectangle of white paper. He knew. He knew he was going to die? No, that didn't make sense. The heart attack was sudden, but he knew something. He had prepared for something. I slid my thumb under the flap and tore it open. 2 things fell out onto my lap. The first was a key. It was small, made of brass, with a square head. It didn't look like a house key. It looked industrial, heavy for its size. On one side, stamped into the metal, was a number, 402. On the other side, the brand name of a lock manufacturer was etched in tiny letters. It looked like a safe deposit box key. The second thing was a letter, folded in thirds. It was written on a sheet of plain notebook paper, the kind he used in his office for drafting quick calculations. I unfolded the paper. The date at the top was only 3 weeks ago. My dearest Sophie, if you are reading this, then I am no longer there to protect you, and for that, I am profoundly sorry. I know you are angry with me. You have every right to be. I know you think I have been blind for the last 10 years, that I let Vanessa push you out, that I chose a quiet life over my own daughter. You were right about the quiet life. I was a coward. Sophie, I thought if I just kept the peace, if I just gave her what she wanted, we could all survive. I thought I was managing her. I thought I was keeping the family together. But I was wrong. I wasn't managing anything. I was just letting you drown. I choked back a sob, tears blurring the ink. I had to wipe my eyes to keep reading. I heard you that night, years ago, when you told me she treated you like a maid. I didn't defend you then because I was afraid of losing her. I was afraid of being alone again after your mother died. It is a shameful admission for a father to make, but it is the truth. But I haven't been blind. Sophie, not lately, over the last 6 months. I have seen the changes. I have seen the way she looks at the accounts. I have seen the way she talks about you when she thinks I am not listening. She has been pushing me to sign over the power of attorney, to change the deeds, to consolidate everything under her name. She thinks I am a senile old man who just nods and signs, but I am still an accountant. I know where the money goes. That brings me to your birthday. Well, my birthday. Technically, I am writing this before the party, but I have a feeling something is going to happen. The tension in this house is like a gas leak waiting for a spark. I want you to know exactly what happened that night. When I walked into the kitchen and saw her hand raised against you, saw the look of pure hatred on her face, I knew that my time for keeping the peace was over. I stood there, and I saw clearly for the first time in a decade. If I had stayed and fought her then, she would have destroyed everything. She would have called the police on you. She would have spun a story. She would have found the documents before I could move them. I didn't leave the house because I was abandoning you. Sophie, I left because I had to get the evidence out of the house before she realized what I had done. The black metal box, you remember it? I nodded to the empty room. Yes, Dad, I remember. I took it from the safe that night. Inside that box is the truth. It contains the real, notarized copy of my last will and testament, the one executed with Jonathan Keller, not the forgery she has likely been waving in your face. It contains a full accounting of the assets I have quietly moved into your name over the last year, and it contains a USB drive with recordings of conversations I have had with her. I could not leave that box in the house. She has the combination to the wall safe. She checks it every day. I drove that night to Farmville. I know it seems random, but I have an old friend there, a branch manager at First Dominion Bank. His name is Robert. But the person you need to see is the vault manager, Marcia Coleman. I opened a private safety deposit box there under a name she will not think to check, your mother's maiden name. The key you are holding opens Box 402 at the First Dominion Bank branch on Main Street in Farmville. Do not lose it. It is the only key I have access to, as I destroyed the duplicate to ensure Vanessa could never find it. If you are reading this, it means Vanessa has already made her move. She has probably shown you a will that leaves her everything. She has probably told you I didn't care. Do not believe a single word that comes out of that woman's mouth. She is desperate, and desperate people are dangerous. Take this key, go to Farmville, see Marcia, get the box. And Sophie, please forgive me for taking so long to fight back. I love you more than anything in this world. You are the best part of me, and the best part of Emily. Love, Dad. I sat there for a long time, the letter resting on my knees. The silence in the apartment felt different now. It wasn't empty anymore. It was charged. My father hadn't abandoned me. The image of him walking out the door that night replayed in my mind, but the context had shifted violently. He hadn't been fleeing conflict. He had been on a mission. He had walked past us, ignoring her screams, ignoring my confusion, because he was carrying a grenade that would blow her world apart, and he needed to get it to a bunker. Farmville. That was why he was on Route 15. He wasn't just driving aimlessly. He was driving to the bank. He had died securing my future. A cold chill went down my spine. He had died on the road. Had he made it? I opened a private safety deposit box there. He wrote this letter before the party, but the box. He took the box during the party. My mind raced. Connecting the timeline, he wrote the letter and hid the key in the cookbook days or weeks ago, as a failsafe. He knew if he died suddenly, Vanessa would ransack the office, but she would never touch the cookbook. He knew I would eventually come for Mom's things. It was a brilliant, heartbreakingly specific hiding spot. But on the night of the party, things escalated faster than he planned. He saw the violence. He realized he couldn't wait anymore. He grabbed the box to take it to the bank that night. Wait. If he died on the road, did the box make it to the bank? The coroner said it was likely instant. He pulled over to the shoulder. If he had the box in the car when he died, the police would have cataloged it with his personal effects. Vanessa said the police only gave her his wallet and watch. The police didn't give me any box, she had said. Was she lying? If she had the box, she would have destroyed the will inside. She wouldn't be chasing me for stolen documents. She was chasing me because she didn't have the documents. She knew the safe was empty. She knew he took the box, but she didn't know where it was. That meant the box was either still in his car at the impound lot, or he had made it to the bank. He passed away early this morning, Mr. Keller had said, found around 6 in the morning. But he left the party at 9 at night. Farmville was 2 hours away. He would have arrived around 11 at night. The bank would have been closed. My heart hammered. There was a gap in the timeline. Where was he between 11 at night and 6 in the morning? I looked at the letter again. Marcia Coleman. She has been Elliot's confidant. Maybe he had a night drop arrangement. Maybe he met someone. Or maybe the box was already there. No, he took the box from the house when he left. I gripped the brass key in my hand until the edges bit into my palm. The number 402 stared back at me. I didn't have all the answers yet, but I had the one thing Vanessa didn't have. I had the key, and I had a name. I stood up, my legs stiff. I walked to the window and looked out at the rain-slicked streets of Richmond. The fear that had paralyzed me for weeks was evaporating, replaced by a cold, hard clarity. Vanessa thought she was fighting a scared, lonely girl who had been disowned by her father. She thought she had won the war because she held the high ground. She didn't know I had just found the map to the armory. I went to my desk and opened my laptop. I typed First Dominion Bank, Farmville, Virginia, into the search bar. It existed. It opened at 9 in the morning. I typed, Marcia Coleman, Farmville. A LinkedIn profile popped up. Senior Vault Manager at First Dominion Bank. I looked at the clock. It was 1 in the morning on Friday. I wouldn't sleep tonight. I would shower, I would dress, and I would drive. I would be at the doors of that bank the second they unlocked. I picked up my phone. I saw the thread of abusive texts from Vanessa, the threats from her lawyer, the silence from my relatives. I didn't reply. I didn't block them. I just put the phone in my pocket. Okay, Dad, I whispered to the empty room, clutching the brass key like a weapon. Let's go finish this. I packed a bag. I took the letter, the key, and my birth certificate. I put them all in my purse. Then, I took the cookbook. I wasn't leaving it behind. It had saved me. As I walked out of my apartment into the rainy night, I wasn't Sophie the victim anymore. I was Elliot Harrison's daughter, and I was going to claim my inheritance, not the money. The truth? The drive to Farmville took exactly 1 hour and 45 minutes. I drove in silence. The radio turned off. The only sound, the hum of tires on wet asphalt and the frantic rhythm of my own heart. The Virginia countryside rolled by in a blur of green fields and white fences, but I saw none of it. I was gripping the steering wheel so tight my knuckles were white, the brass key burning a hole in my pocket. First Dominion Bank was a small, red brick building on Main Street, sandwiched between a hardware store and a diner. It looked nothing like the glass and steel fortresses in Richmond. It looked like a place where everyone knew everyone's business. I walked in at 9:15 in the morning. The air conditioning was cold, smelling of floor wax and old money. I approached the teller counter, trying to keep my breathing steady. I am here to see Marcia Coleman, I said. My name is Sophie Harrison. The teller, a young woman with bright red lipstick, paused. Her eyes flicked up to my face, then down to a notepad, then back up. 1 moment, please. She picked up the phone and whispered something. Less than 30 seconds later, a heavy oak door behind the counter opened. A woman in her early 60s stepped out. She wore a sensible navy suit and glasses on a chain, but her face was kind, lined with worry. Sophie, she said, bypassing the counter to come out into the lobby. She didn't offer a handshake. She reached out and took both my hands in hers. You look just like him around the eyes. You knew him, I said, my voice thick. For 30 years, Marcia said softly. Come with me. She led me back into a private office, closing the blinds. I heard about the heart attack. I'm so sorry. He was a good man. Sophie, a very meticulous man. He left me a letter, I said, reaching into my purse. And this? I placed the brass key on her desk. Marcia nodded. She didn't look surprised. He called me on Saturday night, late. It must have been near midnight. He sounded chaste. He asked me to meet him here at the bank. It is against protocol to open the vault after hours. But for Elliot, I did it. The missing hours. My father hadn't died on the way to the bank. He had made it. He had secured the box, said goodbye to his old friend, and died on the drive back. His mission complete. He told me that if anything happened to him, you would come, Marcia said. He gave me strict instructions. No one accesses Box 402 but Sophie Harrison, and only if she presents the key and the handwritten letter. She looked at the letter I had placed on the desk, verifying the handwriting. Then she stood up. Let's go. The vault was cool and silent, lined with walls of stainless steel drawers. Marcia walked to row 4, inserted her master key, and gestured for me to insert mine. We turned them in unison. The lock clicked, a solid, heavy sound that echoed in the small room. Marcia pulled the long metal drawer out and carried it to a small private viewing room. She set it on the table. Take as long as you need, she said. She stepped out and closed the door. I was alone. I stared at the black metal box sitting inside the drawer. It was the same box I had seen tucked under my father's arm as he walked out into the night. It was dented on one corner. I reached out and lifted the lid. It wasn't empty. On top sat a thick document bound in blue legal paper. Beneath that, a black leather notebook, a silver USB drive, and several sealed envelopes. I reached for the blue document first. Last Will and Testament of Elliot James Harrison. I flipped to the signature page first. It was dated April 10th, 2 days before the party. It was signed by my father. Witnessing signatures by Jonathan Keller and another lawyer I didn't know. But what caught my eye was the red stamp at the bottom. Video affidavit on file. I turned back to the distribution of assets. I read it, and my jaw tightened. Article 3. Distribution of estate. To my wife, Vanessa Harrison, I leave the sum of $250,000, along with the contents of the joint checking account, as per the terms of our prenuptial agreement, which she has frequently attempted to contest. To the Emily Harrison Scholarship Fund, I leave the sum of $100,000. To my daughter, Sophie Harrison, I leave the remainder of my estate, including the real property at 442 Elm Street, the entirety of my investment portfolio held at Vanguard, and all personal effects. It was the complete opposite of the will Vanessa had shown me. In her version, I got nothing. In this version, she got a payout, and I got the home. I found a sticky note attached to the front of the will in Dad's handwriting. Sophie, this is the only valid will. I signed this in Keller's office with a camera rolling to prove I was of sound mind and under no duress. I knew Vanessa would try to produce a later version. If she produces a document dated after April 10th, it is a forgery or signed under coercion. Do not let her win. I set the will down, my hands shaking. He had foreseen it all. He knew she would try to rewrite history, so he had videotaped the truth. I picked up the USB drive. I opened my laptop, which I had brought with me, and plugged it in. There were 5 audio files. They were labeled by date. I clicked on the one dated 2 weeks ago. The sound of my father's voice filled the small room, tinny but unmistakable. He sounded tired. Why do you need power of attorney, Vanessa? I am perfectly capable of managing the accounts. Then, Vanessa's voice. It was sharp, aggressive, the voice she used when no one was watching. Because you are slowing down. Elliot, you are forgetting things. And honestly, it is embarrassing. I am your wife. I should have control. Why do you treat me like an outsider? I treat you like a wife, Dad said, but you treat me like a mobile bank. I treat you like an investment, Vanessa shouted. The recording distorted slightly from the volume. I have given you the best years of my life. I am not going to be left with pennies because you want to hoard it all for that ungrateful daughter of yours. I clicked on the next file. It was dated the day of the party. The timestamp was 4 p.m, hours before I arrived. If you invite her, I am going to make her life miserable, Vanessa's voice hissed. It is my birthday, Dad said. His voice was incredibly weak. I want her there. Fine, Vanessa spat. But once she is gone, we are signing the new papers. I am done waiting. Elliot, if you die tomorrow, do you think she can handle this estate? She is weak. If you go, everything belongs to me. I will make sure of it. If you touch her, Dad said, and his voice dropped an octave, becoming cold and hard. If you try to cheat her, Vanessa, I will burn the whole thing down. I will leave you with nothing. You won't have a choice, she replied. Dead men don't sign checks. I pulled the headphones off, my stomach churning. Dead men don't sign checks. She had practically confessed to a plan to defraud him the moment he died. I reached for the black leather notebook. It was a ledger. Dad was an accountant to his bones. He hadn't just suspected her, he had audited her. March 3rd, Vanessa presented a transfer request for $50,000. The signature on the bottom was mine, but the loop on the J was wrong. I did not sign this. I canceled the transfer, told her it was a bank error. March 15th, found a draft of a new will in her desk drawer. It lists her as sole beneficiary. Confronted her. She claimed it was a joke. April 1st, she is changing my medications. I feel foggy in the mornings. I have started hiding my pills and taking only the ones I get from the pharmacy myself. I gasped. She is changing my medications. This wasn't just fraud. This was something darker. This was slow, calculated abuse. At the bottom of the box was a thick white envelope. On the front, Dad had written, "For Sophie's lawyer, in case of litigation." I didn't open it. I knew what it was. It was the chain of custody. It was the affidavit explaining why the documents were here, verified by Marcia, verified by Keller. It was the nail in the coffin of Vanessa's defense. I sat back in the chair, the gravity of the situation settling over me. Vanessa had shown me a will where she got everything. She had filed papers in court. She had possibly even forged his signature on a new document after he died, backdating it to look like it superseded this one. That wasn't a family dispute. That was a felony. That was fraud. That was forgery. And with the notes about the medication, it bordered on elder abuse or even homicide investigation territory. The fear I had felt for weeks, the fear of her money, her social status, her sharp tongue, evaporated. In its place was a cold, white-hot rage. She had terrified a dying man. She had made him feel unsafe in his own home. She had made him drive 2 hours in the middle of the night, on a bad heart, just to protect me. She had killed him, maybe not with a gun, but with stress, with fear, with the relentless pressure of her greed. I packed the items back into the box. I put the will, the USB, and the notebook inside. I locked it. I walked out of the viewing room. Marcia was waiting for me. "Did you find what you needed?" she asked. "I found everything," I said. "Marcia, can you certify that he brought this here on Saturday night? That no one has touched it since?" "Absolutely," she said. "I logged it in myself. The timestamps are on the security footage." "Good," I said. "Do not delete that footage." I walked out of the bank into the bright midday sun. The rain had stopped. The air was fresh and clean. I took out my phone. I had missed 3 calls from Vanessa. I ignored them. Instead, I opened my browser and searched for top estate litigation attorneys, Richmond aggressive. I wasn't going to hire a family friend. I wasn't going to hire someone nice. I needed a shark. I needed someone who would look at this box and see blood in the water. I found a name, Alicia Morgan. The reviews called her terrifying and unrelenting. I dialed the number. "Morgan Law," a receptionist answered. "My name is Sophie Harrison," I said, my voice steady and hard. "I have a 7-figure estate dispute, a notarized will that contradicts a filed probate, audio recordings of extortion, and a logbook of forged signatures. I need to see Alicia Morgan today." There was a pause on the other end. "Can you be here at 2?" "I will be there," I said. I got into my car and placed the black metal box on the passenger seat. I buckled the seatbelt around it. "We are going home, Dad," I said. I started the engine. The drive back to Richmond wouldn't be a retreat. It was an advance. Vanessa wanted a war. She wanted to drag my name through the mud. She wanted to talk about who deserved what. Fine, I was bringing the receipts, and I was going to take back every single thing she had stolen. The office of Alicia Morgan was nothing like the warm, mahogany-paneled den where Mr. Keller practiced law. It was located on the 14th floor of a steel tower in downtown Richmond, a space of chrome, glass, and aggressive minimalism. The view from the floor-to-ceiling windows looked down on the city like a chessboard, which I suspected was exactly how Alicia liked it. I sat across from her at a table made of a single slab of gray slate. I had placed the black metal box in the center. Next to it, I laid out the items one by one: the blue-bound will, the black leather notebook, the USB drive, and the handwritten letter from my father. Alicia Morgan was a woman who looked like she had been carved out of marble. She was perhaps 45, with hair cut in a sharp, asymmetrical bob and eyes that missed nothing. She didn't offer me tea or sympathy. She put on a pair of reading glasses and spent 20 minutes reading in absolute silence. I watched her turn the pages of the notebook. I watched her scan the affidavits. I watched her plug the USB into her secure laptop and listen to 30 seconds of the audio, her expression unmoving. Finally, she took off her glasses and looked at me. "You realized," she said, her voice cool and precise, "that you have not just brought me a defense case, you have brought me a demolition crew." "I know," I said. "She told everyone I was a thief. She told everyone I was greedy. I want to prove she's a liar." Alicia leaned back, steepled her fingers, and looked at the box. "In estate law, we usually deal with gray areas. Undue influence is hard to prove. He said, she said, is the standard, but this?" She tapped the USB drive. "This is premeditated malice. And this notebook? If the handwriting analysis confirms he didn't sign those transfer requests, we are looking at criminal fraud, not just civil liability." She picked up a silver pen. "Here is the situation. Vanessa has filed a will for probate. We are going to file a caveat immediately to stop that process. We are going to present this will, the one with the video affidavit, as the true and final testament. Given the dates and the video evidence, the court will almost certainly uphold it. That gets you the house and the portfolio." "That is not enough," I said. The words tasted like iron in my mouth. "She ruined his last year. She made him afraid in his own house, and she is out there right now playing the grieving widow and painting me as a monster." Alicia smiled. It was a sharp, terrifying smile. "I was hoping you would say that. Winning the money is easy. Winning the narrative? That takes strategy." She stood up and walked to a whiteboard on the wall. She drew a line down the middle. "We fight a two-front war," she said, writing legal on the left and public on the right. "On the legal front, we go nuclear," she explained, tapping the board. "I am going to file an emergency motion to freeze all estate assets. She won't be able to buy a latte with your father's money starting tomorrow. Then, we file a counterclaim for fraud and intentional infliction of emotional distress based on these recordings. We will subpoena her phone records, her emails, and her bank statements. We will make her life a forensic audit." "And the public front?" I asked. Alicia turned to me. "Vanessa is winning right now because she is telling a story. It is a simple story. Poor widow, mean stepdaughter. People love that story. It confirms their biases. You have been silent, which in the court of public opinion implies guilt." "She threatened to sue me if I talked," I said. "She threatened to sue you for defamation," Alicia corrected. "Defamation requires two things. A statement must be false, and it must cause damage. If you tell the truth, and you can prove it is the truth, it is not defamation. It is just history." She sat back down and looked me in the eye. "I want you to write. Do you have a platform?" "I have a blog I haven't used in years," I said. "And my social media." "Good," Alicia said. "I want you to write a post, but listen to me very carefully. Sophie, this is the most important part. You cannot be angry. You cannot call her names. You cannot say Vanessa is a thief or Vanessa is a liar. Those are conclusions. You give the audience facts. You let them draw the conclusions." What do I say? You tell the story of the birthday, Alicia said. You tell the story of the chores. You tell the story of the slap. And you tell the story of your father walking out. But, and this is crucial, you do not mention the specific contents of this box. You do not mention the new will. You do not mention the money. Why? I asked. Because if you talk about the money, you look like you are fighting for the money, Alicia said, her eyes gleaming. We want you to look like you are fighting for the truth. We want to bait her. If you reveal we have the winning will, she might fold and try to settle quietly. I don't want her to settle. I want her to panic. I want her to lash out. When narcissists are cornered, they get sloppy. Let's make her sloppy. That night, I sat at my kitchen table. The cursor blinked on the white screen of my laptop. I typed a title. The Silence of the Exit. I started writing. I didn't write about legal battles. I wrote about being 15 years old and scrubbing a roasting pan while a party raged in the other room. I wrote about the specific sound of Vanessa's heels on the tile. I wrote about the birthday party, the smell of the expensive lilies, the tension in Dad's shoulders. I wrote about the kitchen scene in vivid, sensory detail. She pinned me against the granite counter. I felt the edge dig into my spine. She raised her hand, her palm flat and hard, ready to strike a 28-year-old woman because I had refused to be bullied. And then, he walked in. I described Dad standing there. I described the silence. He didn't scream. He didn't fight. He just looked at us. And in that moment, he made a choice. He turned his back, went to his safe, and removed a single black metal box. He walked past his wife, past his guests, and out the front door into the night. He didn't say goodbye. He just said, "Remember tonight." I paused, my fingers hovering over the keys. Alicia had said to keep the ending open, to make people question the narrative Vanessa had spun. I typed the final paragraph. For days, I thought he had abandoned me. I thought his silence was cowardice. But after he died alone on a roadside 2 hours from home, I found the letter he left for me. I found the key he had hidden. And I realized that a father who walks out of his own birthday party with a box of documents isn't running away. He is running a rescue mission. He didn't leave to abandon his daughter. He left to ensure that when the time came, she would have the one thing he could still give her, the truth. I read it over. It was raw. It was factual. And it was devastating. I hit publish. Then, I shared the link on my personal Facebook page with a simple caption, "For Dad, and for anyone who has ever been told their memory of abuse is wrong." I turned off my phone and tried to sleep. I didn't think it would go far. I had maybe 300 friends, mostly from college and work. I woke up at 7 in the morning to a phone that was vibrating so hard it was moving across the nightstand. I had 150 notifications. I opened Facebook. The post had been shared 400 times. I scrolled through the comments. They weren't just from my friends. They were from strangers. This gave me chills. My stepmother was exactly the same. The perfect hostess syndrome. I know this woman. I know this life. Stay strong. Sophie. Wait, is this about the Harrisons in Maple Ridge? I was at that party. I saw him leave. I thought he was just getting ice. That was the comment that made my heart leap. A witness, a neighbor. I went to the local community page, the one where Vanessa had posted about me being a security threat. Someone had screenshotted my blog post and dropped it in the comments of her grief post. Vanessa, is this true? Did Elliot really leave the party with a box? You said he went to bed early. I always thought it was weird how Sophie was always in the kitchen while you were drinking wine. Vanessa, just saying. The tide was turning. It wasn't a tsunami yet, but the water was receding from the shore. Vanessa's narrative of the crazy, greedy daughter was cracking. People understand money disputes. They are messy. But people feel the visceral reality of a parent protecting a child from abuse. By framing Dad's exit as a rescue mission, I had turned him from a passive victim into a hero, and myself from a vulture into a survivor. I called Alicia at 9 in the morning. "It is working," I said. "I know," Alicia replied, sounding satisfied. "We have already served the papers to her lawyer. The assets are frozen as of 8:30 this morning. She went to the grocery store an hour ago and her card was declined. My source at the bank tells me she made quite a scene. What happens now? Now, Alicia said, we wait for the tantrum. It didn't take long. At noon, my cousin Beatrice, the one who had shared Vanessa's initial post, sent me a screenshot. Vanessa had posted again, but this time, the polished, PR-friendly tone was gone. She was angry. It is disgusting how some people will twist the memory of a dead man to get 5 minutes of fame. Writing fairy tales on blogs doesn't change the law. Elliot left that party because he was stressed out by you. He died because his heart couldn't take the drama you caused. Keep telling your lies. The truth is in the legal documents, not in your creative writing class assignments. She didn't name me, but she didn't have to. She had taken the bait. Alicia texted me 10 minutes later. She just admitted on a public forum that Elliot left the party because of stress involving you. She just corroborated your timeline. She also claimed the truth is in the legal documents. When we prove her documents are fake, this post will be evidence of her intent to deceive. Screenshot it, save it, do not reply. I watched the comments on Vanessa's new post. This time, there were no prayers for the widow. Vanessa, why are you so defensive? If it's not true, ignore it. You said last week he went to bed happy. Now you say he left because of stress? Which is it? My mom saw the police report. He was found in Farmville. That's 2 hours away. Why was he driving to Farmville if he was just stressed? The questions were starting. The doubt was spreading like a virus through the perfectly manicured streets of Maple Ridge. I sat back in my chair, looking at the black box on my table. I hadn't said a word to Vanessa. I hadn't sent a single text. I had just told a story. And now I was watching her tear her own house down, brick by brick, trying to throw them at me. I felt a strange sense of calm. This wasn't just revenge. This was justice. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't the one afraid of the consequences. But I knew Vanessa. I knew that when she felt cornered, she didn't just lash out with words. She would try to find a way to hurt me that would stick. She would dig into the past. She would try to find the one thing she thought could humiliate me into silence. I just didn't know how low she was willing to go until the next morning. The high of seeing the tide turn in my favor lasted exactly 48 hours. I should have known better. I should have known that a woman like Vanessa does not retreat when she is wounded. She gets infections, and she spreads them. I was sitting in my office at Northlight Pixel Studio, trying to focus on a copy deck for a new client, when my phone buzzed. Then it buzzed again, and again. Within 10 seconds, it was vibrating continuously against the desk surface, a frantic, insect-like sound that made my stomach turn over. I picked it up. I had 20 new notifications on Facebook, but these were not the supportive comments of yesterday. You need help. Sophie, seriously, I cannot believe you would drag your father's name through the mud like this when you know you are sick. Lying about abuse is a new low, even for you. My heart hammered a strange, erratic rhythm against my ribs. I clicked on the first notification. It took me to a video. Vanessa had gone live. The video was titled, "The Truth My Husband Cannot Speak." It was filmed in the living room of the Maple Ridge house, my father's living room. Vanessa was sitting on the beige sofa, clutching a tissue, but she wasn't alone. Sitting around her, like a Greek chorus of suburban judgment, were 3 of her closest friends and my Aunt Linda. They looked solemn, nodding sympathetically as Vanessa spoke to the camera. I plugged in my headphones, my hand shaking so hard I could barely find the jack. "I did not want to do this," Vanessa began, her voice cracking perfectly on cue. She looked exhausted, wearing no makeup, her hair pulled back in a severe bun. "I wanted to protect Elliot's memory. I wanted to protect his daughter's privacy. But when I see the lies being spread, when I see a young woman exploiting her father's death for internet fame, I cannot stay silent." She took a deep breath, and Aunt Linda patted her knee. "Sophie has always been troubled," Vanessa said, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Elliot loved her, and I tried to love her, but we have struggled for years. After her mother passed, Sophie had a very hard time. We had to send her to therapy. There were incidents, outbursts, imagined slights. I gasped aloud in the quiet office. I had gone to a grief counselor for 6 months when I was 13 because my mother had died of cancer. That was it. It was normal grief processing. She was painting it as a history of mental instability. Elliot was so worried about her mental health, Vanessa continued, tears spilling over. Especially toward the end, he told me, "Vanessa, I'm afraid she is losing her grip on reality." That is why he left the party that night. He wasn't rescuing anything. He was heartbroken. He walked out because Sophie was having an episode in the kitchen, screaming at me, threatening me, and he just couldn't take the stress. He went to drive to clear his head, and that drive killed him. She looked directly into the lens. "Sophie, if you are watching this, please stop. We know you are hurting. We know you are confused, but making up stories about a secret box and abuse? It is a symptom, honey. It is not the truth." Then, she held up a piece of paper. It was blurred, likely by the compression of the video, but it looked official. It had a medical logo at the top. "I found this in Elliot's files," she said, waving the paper. "Notes from her doctors years ago, diagnoses that explain a lot of the paranoia we are seeing now. I won't read them out of respect for her privacy, but the family knows the truth." The video ended. I sat there, frozen. The air in the office felt too thin. She had weaponized my grief. She had taken the most painful year of my life, the year I lost my mother, and twisted it into proof that I was crazy. And she had done it with a prop, a piece of paper that could have been a grocery list for all anyone knew. But in the court of public opinion, it was a smoking gun. I scrolled down to the comments. The sympathy I had garnered 2 days ago was evaporating. I knew there was something off about her story. Who remembers details like that from 10 years ago? Mental illness is sad. She probably believes her own lies. Poor Vanessa, dealing with a funeral and a psycho stepdaughter. I felt like I was back in high school, standing in the kitchen while Vanessa whispered to my father that I was difficult, that I was acting out, until even I started to question my own sanity. The gaslighting was happening again, but this time it was being broadcast to the world. I grabbed my phone and dialed Alicia. "Did you see it?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I am watching it right now," Alicia said. Her voice was not panicked. It was sharp, cold, and incredibly focused. "Sophie, listen to me. Do not post. Do not comment. Do not defend yourself." "She is calling me crazy," I cried, tears hot on my face. "She is showing medical records. That is a lie. I went to a grief counselor." "I know," Alicia said, "and that is why we are going to nail her." "What?" "She just held up a document claiming it was your medical history," Alicia explained. "Even if it is fake, which I assume it is, she is publicly claiming to disclose private medical information to discredit you. That is an invasion of privacy. It is intentional infliction of emotional distress. And if that document is real, it is a HIPAA violation of the highest order. She just handed us a loaded gun." "Sophie." "It doesn't feel like a win," I whispered. "Everyone believes her. Aunt Linda is sitting right there nodding along." "Let them nod," Alicia said. "The court does not care about Aunt Linda's opinion. The court cares about evidence. And Vanessa just proved malice. She is trying to destroy your reputation to protect the assets. We add this to the filing. We sue for defamation. We sue for public disclosure of private facts. She wants a fight? She just escalated this from a probate dispute to a personal injury lawsuit." I hung up, trying to internalize Alicia's confidence, but the shame was a heavy blanket. I packed up my laptop. I couldn't work. I felt the eyes of my coworkers on me, wondering if they had seen the video, wondering if the quiet editor in the corner was actually a paranoid woman with a history of outbursts. I drove home, feeling smaller than I had in years. I sat on my couch, staring at the black box on my coffee table. Was it worth it? I asked myself. Maybe I should just let her have the money. Maybe I can't win against someone who fights this dirty. My phone chimed. I flinched. I didn't want to look. I expected more hate mail. but the name on the screen was unexpected. Mrs. Dolores. Mrs. Dolores lived next door to us in Maple Ridge. She was 75, a widow herself, who spent most of her days gardening and watching the neighborhood through her front window. I hadn't spoken to her since the funeral. I opened the message. Sophie, dear, I saw the video that woman posted. I do not have a Facebook account, but my granddaughter showed me. It made me so angry I spilled my tea. A second message followed. She is lying, and I can prove it. My heart skipped a beat. What? I have one of those video doorbells, Dolores wrote. My son installed it for me last Christmas. It records the street. I checked the footage from the night of the party because I remembered seeing your father. I thought you might want to see this. Attached was a video file. I clicked it. The footage was grainy, black and white night vision, time-stamped 9:12 p.m. on the night of the party. The angle showed the front of my father's house and part of the driveway. The front door opened. My father stepped out. He wasn't stumbling. He wasn't holding his chest. He wasn't acting like a man fleeing a hysterical daughter. He was walking with purpose. He was wearing his heavy coat, and tucked firmly under his left arm was the black metal box. He carried a file folder in his right hand. He walked down the driveway, but he didn't go straight to his car. He stopped at the edge of Mrs. Dolores's lawn. The camera picked up audio, faint, wind-distorted, but audible. Mrs. Dolores must have been on her porch. I heard her voice off camera. Elliot, is everything all right? You are leaving your own party? My father stopped. He turned toward Mrs. Dolores's house. The infrared camera caught his face. He looked tired. Yes, but his eyes were fierce. He looked like a man on a mission. I have to go. Dolores, he said. His voice was clear. I have to take care of something before it is too late. Is it Sophie? Dolores asked. I heard shouting. It is Vanessa, Dad said, and then he said the words that would bury Vanessa's narrative forever. She has crossed a line. If anything happens to me tonight, if I don't make it back, I just hope Sophie finds the right thing. She is going to need it. He patted the black box under his arm. Then he turned, got into his car, and backed out of the driveway. The video ended. I sat in silence, tears streaming down my face. But these weren't tears of shame. They were tears of vindication. He hadn't left because I was crazy. He had left because she was dangerous. And he had told a witness, a neutral, third-party witness with a digital recording. I forwarded the video to Alicia immediately. Her reply came in 30 seconds. Bingo. This destroys the hysterical daughter narrative. It confirms he left with the box. It confirms his state of mind was rational and protective, not panicked. We use this. I texted Mrs. Dolores back. Thank you. You have no idea what this means to me. I know a good girl when I see one, she replied, and I know a snake when I see one. Go get her. Sophie. I was feeling a surge of adrenaline when a notification from Jessica popped up. She is spiraling. Soph, look at her page now. I went back to Vanessa's Facebook, emboldened by the support from her video, or perhaps sensing that her hold on the narrative was slippery. Vanessa had decided to go for the kill shot. She had posted a photo. It was a photo of a document lying on a table. The caption read, "Since there are so many conspiracy theories, here is the truth. The only legal will and testament of Elliot Harrison, signed and notarized, leaving everything to his wife, as he intended. Confirmed by our lawyers. Case closed. Now leave us alone." I zoomed in on the photo. It was the document she had shown me in the office. I took a screenshot and sent it to Alicia. Alicia called me. She was laughing, a low, dry laugh. She just posted a legal document on Facebook, Alicia said. Is she representing herself? Because no lawyer on earth would let a client do that. Is it real? I asked. Sophie, look at the signature, Alicia said. I am looking at it on a 27-inch monitor. The pixelation around the signature is different from the rest of the text. It is a cut-and-paste job, a bad one. And look at the date. It says April 15th. That is 3 days after the date on the will we have in the box. So it supersedes ours? I asked, panic flaring again. No, Alicia said, because on April 15th, your father was in the hospital for a stress test. I have his medical records from the insurance company. He was under observation all day. There is no way he was signing a will in front of a notary in Maple Ridge. She messed up the dates. She got greedy. She forged it, I said. And she just posted the forgery on the internet. Exactly, Alicia said. She just published evidence of her own crime. She is trying to win the court of public opinion so badly that she forgot about the actual court of law. 2 hours later, my phone buzzed with an email from Alicia. It was a copy of the filing. Superior Court of Virginia. Case number CV 2024-8900. Sophie Harrison versus Vanessa Harrison. Complaint for 1. Contest of will, fraud and forgery. 2. Intentional infliction of emotional distress. 3. Defamation. 4. Invasion of privacy. Public disclosure of private facts. 5. Elder abuse, financial. Reading the document, seeing my name against hers in black and white, felt like the final locking of a mechanism. The emotional phase was over. The he said, she said on Facebook was over. Vanessa thought she was fighting a social media war. She thought if she could make enough people think I was crazy, she would win. She didn't realize that by posting that video, by holding up that fake medical record, by posting that forged will, she had given us everything we needed to destroy her. She had walked into the trap. I went to my blog. I didn't post the video from Mrs. Dolores. I didn't post the analysis of the forged will. Alicia had told me to go dark. Silence is your loudest weapon now, Alicia had said. Let her scream. Let her post. Let her dig. We speak in court. I typed one final update on my status. Thank you to everyone who has reached out with the truth. The time for internet stories is over. The time for legal facts has begun. See you in court. Vanessa. I closed my laptop. The sun was setting over Richmond, casting long shadows across my apartment. I looked at the black box one last time. You knew she would do this, didn't you? I whispered to the memory of my father. You knew she couldn't help herself. I could almost hear him answering. I knew she was arrogant. Sophie. And arrogance is the one thing you can always count on. The trap was set. The bait was taken. Now, all I had to do was wait for the steel jaws to snap shut. The courtroom of the Superior Court of Virginia smelled of lemon pledge and old anxiety. It was a heavy, windowless room lined with dark oak paneling that seemed to absorb the light, leaving the atmosphere thick with tension. I sat at the plaintiff's table, my hands clasped tightly in my lap to stop them from shaking. Next to me, Alicia Morgan sat like a statue of ice, her files arranged in perfect, geometric alignment. On the other side of the aisle sat Vanessa. She was wearing a navy blue suit that screamed conservative elegance, a single strand of pearls around her neck. She looked fragile, dabbing at dry eyes with a lace handkerchief. Behind her, the gallery was a sea of divided loyalties. My Aunt Linda and a few of Vanessa's bridge club friends sat directly behind the defense table, whispering furiously. On my side, the benches were emptier, save for Mrs. Dolores, who sat upright in her Sunday best, clutching her purse like a weapon, and a few curious reporters from the Richmond Times-Dispatch who smelled a scandal. All rise, the bailiff boomed. Judge Harold Ford entered. He was a man with a face carved from granite and eyes that had seen too many family disputes to be easily impressed. He took his seat, adjusted his glasses, and looked down at us. We are here for the matter of the estate of Elliot Harrison, he said, his voice gravelly. Let us proceed. Vanessa's lawyer, a man named Mr. Sterling, who wore a suit that cost more than my car, stood up to give his opening statement. He walked to the center of the room, buttoning his jacket with a flourish. Your Honor, Sterling began, his voice smooth as oil. This case is not about fraud. It is about grief, and it is about the tragic, confused mind of a daughter who cannot accept that her father moved on. He turned to look at me, his expression pitying. Sophie Harrison has a history of instability. We have seen the social media posts. We have heard the wild accusations. The defense intends to show that the evidence presented by the plaintiff is nothing more than the byproduct of a long-standing mental health crisis. My client, Mrs. Harrison, tried to help her. In fact, we have medical documents dating back 10 years that show— Objection, Alicia said. She didn't shout. She didn't even stand up fully. She just cut through his monologue like a razor blade. Grounds? Judge Ford asked. Alicia stood then, smoothing her skirt. Mr. Sterling is referring to alleged medical records that he has published on social media, but has failed to authenticate in discovery. Furthermore, the public dissemination of these unverified documents constitutes a gross violation of my client's privacy and is currently the subject of a separate defamation suit. We move to strike any mention of medical history unless the defense can produce a subpoenaed doctor to testify today. Sterling stammered. Your Honor, the documents speak to her credibility. The documents are hearsay until proven otherwise, Judge Ford snapped. And if you published private health records on Facebook, Mr. Sterling, I suggest you worry less about the plaintiff's credibility and more about your own bar license. Objection sustained. Move on. Vanessa's face tightened. It was the first crack in the porcelain. I was the first witness called to the stand. The walk to the witness box felt like walking a mile underwater. I swore to tell the truth, took my seat, and looked out at the room. I saw Vanessa glaring at me, her eyes cold and hard. Alicia guided me through the early years gently. I told the court about the chores, the isolation, the way Vanessa would smile when Dad was looking and sneer when he turned away. Let us talk about the night of April 12th, Alicia said. Your father's 60th birthday. What happened in the kitchen? I was washing dishes, I said, my voice steadying. Vanessa came in. She was angry because a guest had mentioned Dad's estate planning. She accused me of trying to steal his money. She pushed me against the counter. Did she touch you? She shoved me, I said, and then she raised her hand to slap me. She told me I was a burden and that she would make sure I never saw a dime. And what happened next? My father walked in. The room went silent. He stood in the doorway, I continued, the memory vivid in my mind. He saw her hand raised. He saw me pinned against the counter. He didn't say a word. He just looked at us. Then he turned around, went to his study, opened the safe, and took out a black metal box and a file folder. He walked out the front door without speaking to anyone. Objection! Sterling stood up. This is convenient storytelling. There were 30 guests at that party, yet no one else saw this dramatic exit? Actually, Alicia said, smiling slightly, we have a witness who saw the exit and heard the intent. She turned to the judge. Your Honor, the plaintiff enters Exhibit C into evidence, surveillance footage from the residence of Mrs. Dolores Miller, dated April 12th, 9:12 in the evening. A screen dropped down. The lights dimmed. The black and white footage played. The courtroom watched as Elliot Harrison walked out of his front door. He wasn't stumbling. He wasn't clutching his chest in panic. He was marching. The black box was clearly visible under his arm. Then came the audio, ghostly but audible over the courtroom speakers. If anything happens to me tonight, if I don't make it back, I just hope Sophie finds the right thing. She is going to need it. Pause, Alicia said. The image froze on Dad's face, grim, determined. He wasn't fleeing a hysterical daughter, was he? Alicia asked the room. He was securing evidence. I looked at Vanessa. She was pale, her hand gripping the edge of the table so hard her knuckles were white. Her narrative of the stressed-out old man fleeing drama had just been obliterated by Dad's own voice. Next came Mr. Keller. The elderly lawyer walked to the stand with the dignity of a man who has practiced law for 40 years. Mr. Keller? Alicia asked, holding up the blue-bound document we had found in the box. Do you recognize this document? I do, Keller said. I drafted it. It is the last will and testament of Elliot Harrison, executed in my office on April 10th. Was Mr. Harrison of sound mind? He was sharp as a tack, Keller said. But he was afraid. He insisted on video recording the signing because he explicitly told me, Vanessa will try to destroy this. He told me she had been pressuring him to sign over power of attorney and that he feared for his safety in his own home. Did he mention the black box? He did. Keller nodded. He told me he was going to keep the original will in a safe deposit box in Farmville, under his first wife's name, because it was the only place Vanessa would never look. Sterling tried to cross-examine, suggesting Keller was senile or biased, but the old lawyer swatted him away like a fly. The testimony was a fortress. Then came the audio. Alicia plugged the USB drive into the court system. Your Honor, we submit these recordings taken by the deceased in the weeks leading up to his death. The first recording played, Vanessa's voice, shrill and cruel, filled the acoustic space of the courtroom. You are a mobile bank. Elliot, I have given you the best years of my life. I am not going to be left with pennies. The reporters in the back row started scribbling furiously. Aunt Linda, sitting behind Vanessa, looked down at her lap, her face flushing red. Then the second clip. You won't live forever. If you go now, everything belongs to me. Dead men don't sign checks. The silence that followed was absolute. It wasn't just embarrassing. It was damning. It was the voice of a woman waiting for her husband to die. Vanessa stared straight ahead, refusing to look at anyone, her jaw set in a rigid line. Dead men don't sign checks, Alicia repeated, letting the words hang in the air. But apparently, they do sign wills 3 days after they die, which brings us to Exhibit F. She called Dr. Aris, a forensic document examiner. He set up a projector. On the left side of the screen appeared the signature from the will Vanessa had submitted to probate, the one dated April 15th. On the right side appeared a signature from a check Dad had written in 2019. In handwriting analysis, Dr. Aris explained, using a laser pointer. No person signs their name exactly the same way twice. There are always microscopic variations in pressure and spacing. It is called natural variation. He clicked a button. The two signatures on the screen slid over each other. They overlapped perfectly. Every loop, every dot, every jagged line matched exactly. This is a mathematical impossibility, Dr. Aris stated. The signature on the April 15th will is a digital copy-paste of the signature from the 2019 check. It is a forgery, and a clumsy one. A gasp rippled through the gallery. The judge leaned forward, peering over his glasses at the screen, then at Vanessa. The look he gave her was terrifying. It was the look of a man realizing his court was being used as a crime scene. Mr. Sterling stood up. Your Honor, my client. She was not aware, perhaps a clerical error. Sit down, Mr. Sterling, Judge Ford barked. Unless you want to be held in contempt. Vanessa had stopped crying. She looked small, shrunken in her expensive suit. The facade of the grieving widow had crumbled, revealing the desperate grifter underneath. Alicia stood up for her closing. She walked over to the plaintiff's table and picked up the last piece of evidence, the handwritten letter from the black box. We have heard a lot today about abandonment, Alicia said, facing the gallery. The defense claims Elliot Harrison left his home because he wanted to get away from his daughter. They claim his silence was a rejection. She unfolded the paper. I would like to read one final excerpt from the letter Elliot Harrison left for his attorney, found inside the lockbox in Farmville. She cleared her throat. To whoever is reading this, I know my departure will be used against Sophie. I know Vanessa will say I left because I was angry. If anyone uses my silence that night to say that I abandoned my daughter, please remind them of this. I did not leave to escape her. I left to save her. The silence was the only weapon I had left. It gave me the head start I needed to get this box out of the house. It was the only way I could protect the only person in this world I truly love. Alicia lowered the paper. She looked directly at Vanessa. He wasn't running from Sophie, Alicia said softly. He was running for her. I felt the tears finally spill over. Not tears of frustration, but tears of release. For weeks. A small part of me had still wondered, did he hate me? Was I too much trouble? But hearing his words read aloud in that sterile room, with the truth projected on the screens and the lies dissolving into the air, I finally knew. He loved me. He loved me enough to drive into the night with a failing heart just to make sure I would be okay. I looked back at the gallery. Aunt Linda was crying, but she wasn't looking at Vanessa anymore. She was looking at me, her expression full of regret. Mrs. Dolores gave me a fierce, proud nod. Even the reporters looked somber, their pens resting on their notepads. Vanessa sat alone at her table. Her lawyer had subtly shifted his chair away from her, creating a physical distance between himself and the sinking ship. She stared at the table, her hands twisting the lace handkerchief until it tore. The judge cleared his throat. "I have seen enough," he said, gathering his papers. "I am ready to issue a ruling." The room held its breath. I looked at the black metal box sitting on the evidence table. It looked battered and old, dented on the corner where Dad must have bumped it against the doorframe in his haste. It was just a box. But in that moment, it looked like the most beautiful thing in the world. Judge Ford did not hammer a gavel. He simply folded his hands over the file in front of him, the sound of paper shuffling echoing in the sudden silence of the courtroom. The air conditioning hummed, a low drone that seemed to vibrate against my skin. I looked at Alicia. She was not looking at the judge. She was looking at Vanessa, her expression unreadable, like a predator watching prey it has already mortally wounded. After reviewing the evidence presented, Judge Ford began, his voice echoing with a gravity that made the hairs on my arms stand up. The court finds the document submitting for probate by the defense, dated April 15th, to be fraudulent. The expert testimony regarding the digital manipulation of the decedent's signature is compelling and unrefuted. Furthermore, the medical records indicating Mr. Harrison's incapacity on that date render the document void on its face. He paused, looking over his glasses at Vanessa. She shrank into her chair, looking like a child waiting for a scolding. Therefore, the judge continued, the court recognizes the last will and testament dated April 10th, as executed in the presence of Mr. Keller and verified by video affidavit, to be the true and legal expression of Elliot Harrison's intent. I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for weeks. My shoulders dropped. Regarding the distribution of assets, Judge Ford read from his notes. Ownership of the property at 442 Elm Street is immediately transferred to the plaintiff, Sophie Harrison. The investment portfolio held at Vanguard is awarded to the plaintiff. Mrs. Vanessa Harrison will receive the spousal stipend as outlined in the prenuptial agreement and reaffirmed in the valid will, totaling $250,000. It was a fraction of the millions she had tried to steal. It was enough to live on, but not enough to maintain the country club lifestyle she cherished. It was exactly what Dad had intended. Fair, but final. Additionally, the judge said, his voice hardening, regarding the counterclaims of defamation and invasion of privacy, the court finds that Mrs. Harrison's public dissemination of unverified and purported medical records was a malicious act intended to cause reputational harm and emotional distress. The defense offered no medical expert to validate these claims, proving them to be baseless attempts to discredit the plaintiff. He looked directly at Vanessa. Mrs. Harrison, you are ordered to pay compensatory damages in the amount of $50,000 to the plaintiff. You are also ordered to immediately remove all social media posts referencing the plaintiff's mental health and to publish a public retraction and apology on the same platforms, to remain visible for no less than 30 days. I was just defending myself, Vanessa shrieked. The sound was piercing, shattering the decorum of the room. She stood up, her face blotchy and red. She attacked me. She is the one who is crazy. I was just trying to show people the truth. Sit down, Mrs. Harrison. The bailiff stepped forward. No! Vanessa turned to the gallery, looking for an ally. She looked at Aunt Linda. Linda, tell them how difficult she was. Aunt Linda did not stand up. She did not nod. She looked down at her purse, her face burning with shame. The other friends in the row shifted in their seats, creating a physical gap between themselves and the woman they had supported just an hour ago. The grieving widow mask had not just cracked, it had fallen off, revealing the desperate, clawing greed underneath. "Court is adjourned," Judge Ford said, standing up. Vanessa dissolved into sobbing hysterics, but it was a lonely sound. Her lawyer was already packing his briefcase, looking like he wanted to be anywhere else on earth. I didn't cheer, I didn't smile, I just felt a massive, crushing weight lift off my chest. It wasn't the elation of winning a lottery, it was the exhaustion of surviving a war. The court had confirmed it. I wasn't crazy, I wasn't greedy, I was just a daughter who had told the truth. Alicia turned to me and offered a rare, genuine smile. "It is over, Sophie." "Thank you," I whispered. I walked out of the courtroom into the bright afternoon sun of Richmond. The reporters were there, asking for a comment. I didn't stop. I didn't need to give interviews. The black metal box under my arm said everything that needed to be said. 2 weeks later, I drove to Maple Ridge. It was a Tuesday, the kind of crisp, clear day that makes the suburbs look like a postcard. I pulled into the driveway of 442 Elm Street. There were no cars in the driveway. The for sale sign Vanessa had threatened to put up was nowhere to be seen. I reached into my purse and pulled out a key. It wasn't the old key I had grown up with. It was a new key, given to me by the locksmith I had hired the day after the verdict. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The house echoed. Vanessa had moved out 3 days ago, complying with the court order. She had taken her furniture, her beige rugs, her glass vases. The house was stripped bare, leaving only the hardwood floors and the pale walls. It smelled of floor wax and emptiness. The cloying scent of her expensive perfume was gone. I walked through the living room. On the walls, I could see the faint outlines of rectangles where pictures had hung, faded spots of paint that marked the years. The ghosts of the happy family portraits were gone, leaving only the scars of the nails. I walked into the study. The heavy oak desk was still there. It was an antique that belonged to the house, so she couldn't take it. The shelves were empty. I walked over to the wall safe. The door was open. I looked inside the dark, hollow metal cube. It was just a cold, empty space now. The secrets it had held were out in the world. I reached into my bag. I took out a photocopy of the valid will, the one Dad had driven through the night to protect. I placed it inside the safe. Then, I took out a photograph. It was a small Polaroid picture from 1998. It was me and Dad at the beach, before Mom got sick, before Vanessa, before everything. We were both laughing, squinting into the sun. I propped the photo against the back of the safe. "You can rest now, Dad," I said softly. "The house is safe." I closed the safe door. I didn't lock it. There was no need to lock it anymore. There were no thieves here. I left the study and walked down the hallway to the kitchen. This was the hardest part. My heart started to beat faster as I crossed the threshold. The kitchen was empty. The counters were bare. The sunlight streamed in through the window over the sink, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. I walked to the spot, the corner of the granite island, the place where she had pinned me. I stood there, placing my back against the cold stone. I closed my eyes. In the darkness behind my eyelids, I could see it all again, the smell of shrimp and wine, the heat of Vanessa's body as she crowded me, the hand raised, fingers rigid, poised to strike. And then, the footsteps. I replayed the moment, but this time, I didn't feel the fear. I felt the clarity. I saw my father standing in the doorway. I saw the look in his eyes, not cowardice, but calculation. I saw him turn. I saw him walk away. He hadn't left me to be beaten. He had realized in that split second that stepping in to shout at her would only be a temporary fix. He realized that to truly save me, to save my future, my home, and his own legacy, he had to destroy her power. And her power was in that safe. He had walked out of the house to strip her of her weapons. He had sacrificed his final hours, his final strength, to make sure that when the war came, I would have the ammunition to win. I opened my eyes. The kitchen was silent. The monster was gone. The man who saved me was gone. But I was still here. I walked to the sliding glass door and looked out at the backyard. The grass was overgrown. Vanessa hadn't paid the landscapers in weeks. It didn't matter. I would cut it myself. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out. It was a text from Mrs. Dolores. I saw your car in the driveway. The house looks good with you in it. I am proud of you. Sophie. Your father certainly would be too. I smiled, typing back a quick thank you. For the first time in 10 years, I didn't feel like a guest in this house. I didn't feel like a nuisance or a maid. I felt like the daughter of Elliot and Emily Harrison. I walked to the front door. I stepped out onto the porch and pulled the heavy oak door shut. The latch clicked with a solid, satisfying sound. I locked the deadbolt with my new key. Then, I reached into my pocket and pulled out the old key, the spare key Vanessa had grudgingly given me years ago, the one she had demanded back a dozen times. I took a white envelope from my bag. I dropped the old key inside. I had addressed the envelope to Alicia Morgan's office. I wasn't sending it to Vanessa. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of a direct contact. I was sending it to be filed away in a cardboard box in a basement somewhere, labeled closed case. I walked down the driveway to my car. I looked back at the house one last time. It stood tall and dignified against the blue sky. It wasn't a fortress of lies anymore. It was just a house that needed some painting, some gardening, and some love. I got into my car and started the engine. I didn't speed away. I drove slowly, rolling down the window to let the suburban breeze hit my face. Revenge wasn't about screaming. It wasn't about posting angry videos or clawing at someone's face. Revenge was a black metal box. Revenge was a brass key hidden in a cookbook. Revenge was the quiet, steady accumulation of truth until the lies simply couldn't stand under the weight anymore. My father had taught me that silence could be a weapon, and I had used it to take back my life. Thank you so much for listening to this story. Please comment below where you are listening from. I would love to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories, like the video, and hit the hype button to help this story be heard by more people.